This is an older comment by J.D. Vance. Was him in late October in Mississippi, speaking at the University of Mississippi, using really old school racist tropes about indigenous people and what settlers found when they came to this country. That just, I think, rounds out our discussion here about how this administration is. I mean, this is arguably the oldest fascist American myth, right? The depiction of the settlers in this way. Would you say that, Matt? Or,
well, I wouldn't call it fascist, but I'll say why after we get done playing.
Or maybe not fascist, but genocidal, or okay, we'll see. We'll see. I want the right adjective.
Work within the political constraints that we have. Now, here, let me just say something about this. And you know, somebody asked me earlier about my Christian values, and one of the points I made is that when the settlers came to the New World, they found a very widespread child sacrifice. I imagine there are some people who don't agree with my view on the pro-life issue. Let me just make an observation. If you go to historical archaeological sites where there were brothels, and the two oldest businesses in the world are gambling and prostitution, so there were brothels even in very ancient civilizations. If you go back to ancient brothels and you dig up the bones of the women who are working in these places, you will very often find a lot of children who are buried with them. And the answer is that whenever a society decides to discard innocent babies, they also don't treat their women very well. And whenever a society mistreats its women, it is very often the babies who come right after that. There is a reason why Christian civilization ended the practice of child sacrifice all over the world, and it's one of the great accomplishments of Christian civilization.
Yeah, why sacrifice them when you can enslave them?
Yeah, why sacrifice them when you can put them in to rip them away from their parents and make them cut off all their hair and then abuse them and then bury them in mass graves, as these schools that the white Christians threw these Native American children into have. It's been discovered that they did that. Mass sexual abuse, torture, killing these children as well, in addition to abusing them mentally at the very least. You guys aren't into child sacrifice. What about all those rural hospital closures? 50% at risk now because of the Republican bill that you just ran through. What do you think?
By the way,
those kids are going to be all right?
The abortions that will still continue to happen will be like highly connected folks who are able to help it. So like that happened at brothels. Like, yes, like guess what? Women who work at brothels have abortions sometimes.
Or have children. Okay, yeah.
But I mean, in the history, like the local doctor will have a relationship with the local brothel. And you know what? That's good for fucking everybody there. Everybody in the community that they do. Because otherwise everyone's going to get fucking syphilis. But like again, you bring up the relevant thing is, well, first of all, why I hesitate to call that fascism is just that's sort of like a liberal interventionist myth. Is we saved them. We had to do this to save them from how bad and savage they are. And you look at like the history of colonization. When the British got in on it, it was after the Spanish and Portuguese, and they were telling their communities, they're like, hey, why do we have to build all these ships for us to go colonize like Jamaica and that sort of stuff? And Cromwell's like, well, because those people want freedom. The Spanish and the Portuguese have treated them so badly that they need us to come and protect them. It is like a sort of, it is definitely racist and paternalistic. But it is this sort of thing of like, we're the good guys though deep down. Whereas you zoom out and you see like, okay, maybe in like the pre-Columbus brothels of the New World, there was some abortions occasionally. You instituted a system that put millions of children and considered them not children but property for laboring. And you wore their bodies out so they would die. And not to mention all the people that in the like bringing Africans over to be enslaved and work in fields, how many of them died on the way there? Like, okay, I'm glad you had some sort of, which tribes even had this sort of abortive policy. Like I would draw a big question mark next to like citation needed.
So, yeah, forgive me for not just taking J.D. Vance's anthropological analysis and historical analysis at face value.
From Catholic fascists today.
But how does he know that those babies were the result of an abortion? Women died in childbirth fairly regularly, and oftentimes the child wouldn't survive. Would that not make a little bit more sense as to why they were being buried together, or is it spooky, scary voodoo? But the invocation of babies. And I'm sorry, I know people might be like, why does everything come back to Zionism in Israel? But it's the whole world is in Gaza for all I care. It is exactly what the Israelis were trying to do to justify their genocide when they talked about the beheaded babies. They went to it right away. It's a way to talk about and dehumanize an indigenous population and basically say that they are too savage to know any better, so we might as well just slaughter them like animals.
It's a warrant for violence.
It's a warrant for, yeah. I mean, and the screams without words. How can we use that as a way to justify violence? They assaulted our women. That is old colonial tropes as well. It's just so important that as we have this historical revisionism at the very top from a Christian nationalist psychotic perspective, that we recognize that we are living in a history today that is not so dissimilar from the one that is being erased by these fascists in order for you to obscure that very reality, so you don't fundamentally understand that fact, and that what will people in passing will acknowledge what we did to the indigenous Americans of this country, the millions and millions of people that were victimized by the genocide in the colonization of this land. That we'll give lip service and say we know better now, but we're doing it as we speak.
Sacrifice babies for God? Well, if it's not Jesus and the God of the Bible, I'm going to have to say no to that. Sacrifice babies for cotton? That's how you build a civilization.
Oh, that was that book I read a good amount, but like I did, that Sven Beckert book Empire of Cotton.
Oh, Slavery's Capitalism? Or maybe it was Empire of Cotton.
I think it was Empire of Cotton. Sacrificing babies to Doge. How many children have died due to those USAID cuts? Is that better or worse than just sacrificing a baby to the gods?
Or just throwing out a bunch of pre-digested peanut butter to let a bunch of African babies starve to death?
Yep.
But those are different babies.
But that's because Elon wanted it, not, and that's very sensible. MJS 617, didn't Columbus and his ilk impose a monthly gold quota on native children that was physically impossible to meet, for which the penalty for failure was cutting off their hands?
Yeah, the most important thing about Columbus is that he was in his time, which is to say 350 years ago, was thought to be doing way too much brutality over there and paid the price for it in Europe.
Yeah.
And we act the stupid the most brain dead sort of approach that people take to this stuff is, it was a long time ago. The world was such a bad place there. The world can actually get worse. There are certain things that we're worse at than in terms of I would say civic responsibility than we were 50 years ago, I think. Mm-hmm. The world can become a worse place.
Hey folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.